The night they wheeled my son away for open heart surgery, the world felt like it had stopped spinning, like everything was holding its breath except me. I remember gripping the arms of that plastic chair so hard my palms ached, watching the surgery doors seal behind him, realizing in one slow, painful heartbeat that no one else was coming. That loneliness, it didn't break me. It just exposed everything that already had been cracked long before. My name is Maura Ellison. I'm 33, and I grew up in a house where love had a clock in time and an approved list of who deserved it. Spoiler, it was never me. I learned early that the easiest way to be loved by my parents was to need nothing from them. So I didn't. Not attention, not praise, not help. I became the dependable daughter, the background character in my own family. My sister, Lily, was the start of fragile, glittering center of every conversation. When she misplaced a bracelet, Mom tore the house apart in panic. When I lost my science trophy, Mom barely looked up from her coffee. "Don't be dramatic, Maura," she said. That was the moment I learned recognition came with conditions. Dad wasn't cruel, just absent in the ways that mattered. When something went right in the house, it somehow turned into his accomplishment. If something went wrong, I handled it before anyone else noticed. That's who I became, the fixer, the responsible one. The one no one checked on because she was fine by the time I landed my first steady hospital job. Mom called only to say, "You're lucky, sweetheart. Maybe you can help Lily get her business started." Lily didn't even have a plan yet, but I said yes because I always did. Quick reminder, most of you aren't subscribed. If you enjoy this, hit subscribe and like now. Then let's get back to the story. The day everything solidified, the day I unknowingly handed them permission instead of help, was a quiet Sunday afternoon. Mom and Dad sat at my small kitchen table, hands folded like they were praying. "It would just make things easier if we had access to your savings," Mom said gently. "You know, emergencies. Family helps family." Dad chimed in, "You're so organized, Maura. We'd never touch a dime unless we had to." I hesitated, and that was all they needed. They left that afternoon with signed forms and proud smiles, calling me their reliable girl. The moment the door clicked shut, a strange silence settled over the room. I didn't know it then, but I'd just given them the keys to parts of my life I could never get back. The years blurred together into a pattern. Their emergencies were never real emergencies. A broken dishwasher, a vacation deposit for Lily, a bridal shower fund. Every transfer came with a short, shallow thank you. No asks about how I was doing, no visits, just expectation disguised as gratitude. Still, I didn't complain. When Lily bragged about Mom always believing in her, I smiled. When Dad told friends his girls were thriving, I nodded, even though only one of us had a seat at the table. The last dinner before my son's surgery was the final confirmation. We were all at Lily's place, her upcoming wedding the only topic anyone cared to discuss. Mom beamed at her like she was royalty. "It's going to be the event of the year," she said, glowing. No one asked about Evan, my little boy. No one asked about the operation scheduled for the following week, the one I'd mentioned 3 separate times just to be sure they knew. I passed the mashed potatoes pretending I didn't notice, pretending it didn't hurt, but it did. That night, after they left, I sat at my kitchen counter reviewing Evan's pre-op instructions and hospital forms. He slept curled on the couch, small chest lifting softly under his dinosaur blanket. My phone buzzed. It was the family group chat. "Lily's dress fitting tomorrow. Can everyone pitch in for the final payment?" I stared until the screen dimmed, then set it aside and went back to the checklists. I showed up, even when no one else did. Then came the day of the surgery. Hours passed in that harsh-lit waiting room, families coming and going, every reunion filled with relief. I stayed alone, my chair cold, my phone silent. When the surgeon finally came out, there was no one beside me to squeeze my hand. Just me and the humming of fluorescent lights. 3 days later, back home, the house was filled only with the sound of Evan's small breathing as he slept on the couch. I was making soup when my phone buzzed. "Mom, need $5,000 for your sister's wedding dress." Everyone's contributing by Friday. No, how's Evan? No, how are you holding up? Just a number. A deadline. The heat from the soup fogged my glasses. I read it again, hoping I misunderstood. I hadn't. That was the moment something in me stopped bending. Later that night, I opened my banking app. The same account my parents had always treated like a communal fund, except it never was. It was mine. Built through late night shifts, missed vacations, quiet sacrifices no one applauded. I typed 50 cents into the transfer box. In the memo, by a veil, a small, soft confirmation sound followed, barely a whisper. But inside me, something shook loose. The next morning, the bank called, and that was when everything in our family finally, violently, unmistakably split open. The morning after I sent that 50 cents felt strangely calm, like the world hadn't realized yet that something enormous had shifted. Evan sat at the table sketching rockets on the back of an old envelope, sunlight catching the faint pink of the healing scar beneath his pajama collar. I poured coffee, the smell grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in years. Can we visit Grandma when I'm better? He asked without looking up. I swallowed the sting. Not right now, buddy. There. Busy with wedding stuff. He accepted that answer the way only children can, with a simple nod, without the weight of what it really meant later. When he left with the home visit nurse for a follow-up check, the house fell into that quiet that holds its own breath. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop, the screen glowing pale blue against the stillness. I went straight to account settings. Remove authorized users, confirm, remove second user, confirm. Each click sounded like a tiny lock snapping shut. Then, change password. Enable two-step verification. Save confirmation email. A printer sheet slid out a soft horror. A small ceremony. I folded the page neatly and labeled it access removed. It felt like filing proof of my own return. At 10 p.m., the doorbell rang. Then the knocking sharp, impatient. Only one person knocked like that. Ryan. When I opened the door, he stood there with his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, the way he always did when he was uncomfortable. His eyes kept darting past me, as if searching the house for the version of me he used to know. Mom's upset, he said. She says you froze her out of the account. It's my account, I replied, calm. He shook his head. No, she said it's family money. It's not. Every dollar in there came from me. That's not what she told us. Ryan, I said softly, Leo's surgery was an emergency. They didn't show up, not once. That promise we made. It ended there. He blinked at that like the truth stung more than the betrayal ever had. You could have told us how serious it was. I did, I said, meeting his eyes. You just didn't want to hear it. He shifted his weight, guilt flickering across his face. She said you sent her 50 cents. I did. Why? Because that's exactly what her concern was worth. The way he looked at me then, like I was someone he had heard about but never met, told me everything I needed to know. He left without another word. The door clicked shut, but for once, the sound didn't echo inside me. It just settled. That evening, Evan sat beside me on the couch, drawing more rockets, the TV muted and golden light filling the room. My phone buzzed repeatedly, unknown numbers, one after another. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened an email notification. Access changes confirmed. All previous authorizations revoked. I read it twice, not because I doubted it, but because the feeling was new. Quiet power. Quiet certainty. I printed it. Filed it under proof. The next morning, I woke early. Coffee, steam, silence. Then the phone rang again, a no number. I answered. Ms. Ellison. This is Ethan Cole from Madison Valley Bank. Your mother is here in my office. She's trying to access an account she says you share. I stared at a tiny crack in the wall, a crack I'd never noticed before. There is no shared account. She was an authorized user. I removed her. A pause. I could hear muffled voices in the background, my mother's voice, sharp enough to cut glass. She insists it's a family fund. It isn't, I said quietly. It's my savings. Every deposit was from my job. She has no claim. Another pause. Would you like me to explain the policy to her? Yes, I said, steady. And please note the time of this call. He hesitated, sensing something larger beneath the surface. Of course, an hour later, the pounding on the door started. Hard. I didn't even flinch. Mara, open up. Lily's voice. I cracked the door just enough to see her face flushed, frantic, already angry. What is wrong with you? She snapped. Mom is a wreck. You humiliated her at the bank. You skipped my son's surgery for cake tastings. I said. I'm done pretending that didn't matter. That's not fair. No, I said calmly. It isn't. She pushed forward, but the chain lock held. Her eyes fell to the folders spread across my table, neat stacks labeled in blue ink. Proof. Access removed. Statements. Freezing mom out doesn't fix anything. She hissed. She did that herself. I whispered back. I just stopped paying for it. Her expression cracked. For the first time, I saw something other than entitlement. I saw fear. Fear of a version of me she couldn't bend or guilt or charm. You're tearing this family apart, she said. No, I replied quietly. I'm just refusing to hold it together alone anymore. She left. Not slamming the door made it feel louder somehow. By noon, the call slowed. By 2, they stopped altogether. I sat with the silence and let it sit with me. For the first time, it felt like something I'd earned, not something I'd been abandoned to. That evening, another email arrived. Account audit complete. All external access permanently removed. The printer hummed again, warm paper sliding into my hand, final and solid. I put it into the proof folder. Later that night, Evan padded into the kitchen, hair messy, pajamas wrinkled. Mom, he mumbled sleepily. Can we make pancakes tomorrow? Of course, I said, smoothing his hair. He smiled and wandered back to bed, the quiet settling behind him like a soft blanket. I watched the light fade across the table, across the folders that held a whole war's worth of evidence. My phone lay face down, now silent. But that silence no longer felt empty. For the first time, it felt like mine. 2 months passed. Evan healed. I healed. The house found its rhythm. No calls from my parents. No dramatic confrontations. Just a stretch of peaceful distance that felt like breathing for the first time in years. Until one evening, near dusk, when the doorbell rang, a plain envelope lay on the doormat. No return address. Inside, a check for $5,000 and a letter in my father's handwriting. And when I read it, the ground under everything I thought I knew shifted. The envelope was thin enough to fold in half. But when I held it, it felt heavier than anything that had come before it. My father's handwriting, that careful, slightly slanted script I'd memorized from years of forgotten birthday cards, sat on the front like a ghost I wasn't sure I wanted to let in. I stood in the doorway for a long moment before I opened it. Inside, a check for $5,000 and a single sheet of paper folded once. I unfolded it. The paper crackling in the quiet. Mara, we were wrong. The wedding wasn't an emergency. Evan's surgery was. We chose wrong, and we hurt you both. This check isn't for you to cash. It's to remind you of the value we forgot. I don't expect forgiveness, only for you to know that I finally understand. I read it twice, then once more, slower. The words didn't feel like an apology so much as a confession, like someone finally turning on the lights in a room we'd all pretended was empty. I set the check on the counter. The air from the window fluttered the corner, and the sound it made, soft, irregular, felt like breathing. Evan shuffled into the kitchen, barefoot, blanket dragging behind him. Mom, who's it from? Grandpa, I said. He wrote to say he's sorry. Evan frowned, confused. Does that mean we have to see them? No, I said gently. It just means they're learning. We don't open the door until we're ready. He nodded with a kind of relief that made something inside me unspool. He went back to the living room, curling onto the couch like the last few months had never happened. I watched him for a moment, his tiny frame, his steady breathing, before turning back to the letter still warming between my fingers. For years, I would have folded myself in half to make room for my parents' needs. I would have mistaken scraps for love, silence for normal, absence for peace. But now the silence didn't hurt. It didn't accuse. It simply existed, and it belonged to me. I slipped the letter into the same folder as the bank confirmations, right behind the printed audit. Not to accept it, not to reject it, just to keep it as part of the recorded evidence of what had broken and what I'd finally put back into my own hands. That night, after Evan fell asleep, I stood in the kitchen with the lights off. The street outside glowed in soft amber lines, and in the window's reflection I could see Asta's silhouette side by side, steady, whole. A long time ago, I thought peace meant fixing everything, repairing every crack until the whole house looked untouched from the outside. I thought loyalty meant staying quiet. I thought love meant shrinking so someone else could shine. But peace isn't repair. Peace is release. It's choosing who gets access not out of fear, but out of clarity. It's knowing that family is not owed. It's chosen, renewed, protected. And sometimes, it's rebuilt from the inside out without asking permission. The next morning, the check was still on the counter, untouched. I picked it up, stared at the numbers, then slid it under a paperweight. I didn't need it. I didn't need the gesture or the guilt. I needed the truth it represented, that the apology belonged to them, but the healing belonged to me. Weeks passed quietly. Evan grew stronger. His scarf faded to a soft pink line, catching the light whenever he stretched or lifted his shirt to show me how much tougher he'd gotten. We made pancakes more mornings than not. I stopped flinching when my phone buzzed. Eventually, it stopped buzzing at all. But the silence was different now. It didn't feel empty. It felt earned. One evening, after I'd finished tucking Evan into bed, I walked back to the kitchen and looked at the folder I kept tucked neatly in the drawer, the one labeled proof. Everything was in there. The bank logs, the revoked access forms, even the letter. I opened the drawer, ran my hand lightly over the folder's cover, then closed it again. I didn't need to revisit it. I didn't need to rehearse the pain. I didn't need to rebuild the case in my head. It was enough to know I had it. It was enough to know the girl who never said no finally had, later. As I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one, I realized something. The kind of quiet I'd fought for wasn't actually quiet at all. It was relief. It was breath. It was space. And it sounded like home. When people ask what I would say to my parents now, I think about that envelope, that check, that letter. And I think some wounds don't need revenge. They need release. Some doors don't need to be slammed. They just need to stay closed. And sometimes, the loudest answer you can give is silence.